Welcome to the Deep Dive. We sift through sources to bring you the core insights. Today, we're looking at a really iconic American symbol, the Liberty Bell. We want to cut through some of the myths, the stories everyone thinks they know, and find out what really happened. Like, where did that famous crack actually come from? Why is it there? Was it even supposed to ring like a normal bell? Let's dive in. Okay, so picture this. You're in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right near Independence Hall. I mean, this is where the Declaration of Independence of the Constitution, all of that happened. And there it is, this huge bell, like over 2,000 pounds of bronze. And it's got that inscription, proclaim liberty throughout all the land and to all the inhabitants thereof.
Leviticus, right?
Exactly, yeah. Leviticus 25.10. And what's so interesting is how that particular line, that quote, really took on a life of its own. It became this incredibly powerful rallying cry. You see it used by abolitionists way back in the 1800s.
Right.
By civil rights leaders much later, just generation after generation finding meaning in those words. It gave the bell purpose, you could say, almost from the beginning. It really feels purposeful when you read it, but then, I mean, you can't not see it. That huge crack right down the side. It's the most obvious thing about it. And the surprising thing I found about that crack, the main one, is the story isn't quite what you'd expect.
No, not really. It's funny. For something so famous, there isn't like an official record. No newspaper from the day saying Liberty Bell cracked. No diary entry.
How do we even know if there's no aha moment documented?
Yeah.
That seems kind of strange for such a big deal.
Well, it becomes a bit of historical detective work. Seriously, historians have had to piece it together. They look at old letters, local legends passed down, even tiny bits of metal left over from attempted repairs. It shows you history isn't always a neat timeline, Yeah. Sometimes it's putting together fragments.
A mosaic, yeah. So this detective work, what did it uncover about the bell's early days? It was ordered in 1751 from London, the Whitechapel Bell Foundry. Got to Philly in 52, and then get this, it cracked almost right away on the very first test ring.
Can you imagine? Talk about an inauspicious start.
See it?
But maybe it's fitting. Even big symbols can have a rocky beginning. So after that first crack, these local guys, John Pass and John Stowe.
Their names are on the bell too, right?
They are, yeah. They took on the job of recasting it, not just once, but twice. They were really trying to get the sound right.
And even after 2 recasts, people were still saying it sounded bad.
Yes. The complaints about the tone didn't stop.
It just goes to show, maybe, even back then.
Right. But despite the complaints, despite the flaws, it stayed in use. It rang for big moments. The reading of the Declaration, yeah, but also election results, celebrations, funerals. It wasn't perfect, but it was there. And slowly, it started becoming more than just this flawed bell. It turned into a kind of voice for liberty. The imperfections became part of its identity, almost.
That's a great way to put it. The flaws became part of the story. Okay, so that was the first crack, the early one. What about the big one? The one that silenced it for good, the one we see today?
Okay, so the general agreement among historians points to the 1840s. Probably around 1846 seems most likely for that final, really visible crack.
And there is a story attached to that one, isn't there?
There is. February 1846. They were ringing the bell for George Washington's birthday celebration.
Yeah.
And apparently it rang okay for a bit, and then just this loud clang followed by silence. Crack. That was the end of his ringing days.
Wow. So that was it.
Pretty much. And it wasn't totally out of the blue. This was after years of use, wear and tear. Plus, those earlier repairs probably didn't help matters much in the long run. It speaks to how even symbols wear down.
Right. And didn't they try to fix a smaller crack before that big one happened? Using that method.
Stop drilling. Yes, that's right.
What is that exactly?
Well, the idea is you drill a small hole right at the very end of an existing crack. The theory is it distributes the stress, stops the crack from spreading further.
Did it work?
Unfortunately, no. Not in this case. The bell actually cracked even more severely after that attempt, became totally unusable as a ringing bell. It hasn't been rung properly since that day in 1846. Its voice was gone.
Okay, so let's talk myths. Because there are some really fun ones out there. The biggest one, the one everyone seems to know, is that it cracked on July 4th, 1776, ringing in Independence. Sounds dramatic, very cinematic.
Oh, absolutely. It's a fantastic image. Perfect for movies, which is probably why it sticks. But historians are pretty clear. Nope. The bell wasn't rung on July 4th.
Really? Not at all?
Not according to the records. The Declaration wasn't even read publicly until July 8th.
July 8th, okay.
And even then, there's no actual record saying the Liberty Bell was the one rung for that specific occasion. So, great story, but fiction.
It's amazing how powerful those fictional moments become, thanks to Hollywood or just, storytelling. Then there's that other idea, the more sort of poetic one, that the crack was somehow intentional, like
Yeah.
meant to symbolize that liberty itself is imperfect, which also sounds kind of deep.
It does sound profound, but yeah, that one's also completely made up. Poetic, but not historical. But, the fact that these myths exist and persist tells you something important. It shows just how incredibly potent the Liberty Bell became as a symbol. People want it to have this dramatic, meaningful story, even if they have to invent parts of it. It resonates that deeply.
So where does that leave the bell today? It's obviously still a huge draw. It sits in its own glass building now near Independence Hall. People come from everywhere to see it.
They do. And even though it's silent, you could argue it speaks more loudly now than ever. It absolutely continues its role as this major symbol. Its meaning hasn't faded.
No, definitely not. You think about who's used it as inspiration. Abolitionists, you mentioned them. Women fighting for the vote used its image. Civil rights leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. explicitly referenced it.
Exactly. That consistent use across different struggles for freedom connects its past right to the present day. It stands for, I think, a kind of American resilience, maybe, a reminder that the fight for liberty is, well, ongoing.
And maybe the crack itself, its meaning has kind of shifted over time, too.
I think that's absolutely right. It's not really seen as just a flaw anymore, is it? It's become part of the narrative. It's a visible sign of its history, its journey. You could say it's what makes the Liberty Bell feel real. Just like liberty itself, it wasn't easy to get. It's not always perfect. It needs defending, but it endures. The crack is almost like a badge of honor now, showing its strength through imperfection.
So there we have it, our deep dive into the Liberty Bell's crack. The history, the myths, the enduring power. It's quite a story when you unpack it all. Part history lesson, part detective story, all wrapped up in this iconic symbol. We hope you found that journey interesting.
And maybe leave you with this thought. How can the flaws, the imperfections, even the early failures of a symbol, or maybe even an idea, how can those things actually end up strengthening its power and its meaning for the people who come later? How does imperfection sometimes lead to greater resonance?